What I found fascinating about reading the book was you're holding a book which appears to be a very, very calm, dispassionate academic presentation of objective findings, and it's actually not. You're actually holding a bomb which explodes at some point in your mind and blows holes in a lot of the walls that we build around the kind of work that we do, and forces us to look outside and see some rather huge challenges. And I wonder whether or not we're up for the challenges. I'll leave the academics among you to kind of to talk about the clever stuff. The book poses some huge research challenges. I mean, how do you go about getting objective evidence, quantitative evidence on perceptions of inequality and political power when so much of that's informal? Right? I'm not going to talk about that. It presents huge challenges for the political engineers, people who want to do the structural creation of democracy in the way that it'll work best. And that's talked about, and I'll let the clever people talk about that. I won't talk about that. What struck me was much more the implications, if you like, for aid practitioners on the ground. Now, from a humanitarian perspective, it's fairly well established. There's a principle called do no harm, which most of you have probably heard of. I mean, it's not a very good title for what it really is, but the idea that everything that you do, you've got to kind of think, how is it potentially contributing to making a conflict better or making it worse? And that is pretty well built in. Lip service is built in to humanitarian response. I wonder how much it is actually built into development support, and I don't think it is at all. The humanitarians we have a lot of problems with it in the humanitarian world, because I mean, we're supposed to be objective, neutral, apolitical, and so on, and we're supposed to be unbiased. And then, I mean, you know, if I think of my own experiences, you know, you're working I was working in Burundi in the war, for example. If you do any unbiased recruitment, you know exactly what you're going to get. If the job is a cleaner, you'll have a Hutu doing the job. If your job is the smart receptionist, project manager, anyone senior, you'll have a Tutsi in the job. That's what happens when you're being unbiased. And what are you doing? You are reinforcing all of the horizontal inequalities, because people see it's prestige, it's money, it's politics, and so on. So we're reinforcing them all. And instead what we do is we worry about, if we don't theorize it well, the kind of inequality we worry about is we go to the village where everybody's poor, and we say, well, as long as it's half Hutus and half Tutsis in an association, we'll hand you some free stuff. And we think that we're somehow contributing to building peace and so on. So basically, the book just kind of challenges everything that we think we're doing. There's another challenge of getting behind the formal in institutions, because really, there's a lovely term I came across recently, isomorphic mimicry. Anyone know? Maybe common knowledge to everyone. I thought it's an evolution. You know, insects kind of, they make themselves look like a dangerous insect even when they're not. You know, the way evolution does that, so you look as though you're poisonous and actually you're not. And governments are brilliant at doing this, you see. So you're told that you have to have, you know, systems of law and order. So you create stuff that looks exactly like systems of law and order in other countries, and we call them police forces and courts. But they don't actually do that job. They just look like it, sound like it. And you know, and we work on that level, because we tend to sit in capitals and we work at this formal level. And the problem is that all of the things that we're hearing about the inequalities, the horizontal inequalities, are all the stuff we're not allowed to talk about, because it's all around no discrimination. It's all around we're all citizens of the country. We're not allowed to talk about race, but all of the institutions are all set up to perpetuate inequality through these hidden informal ways. And I wonder if we're actually up for the challenge of talking about it. I mean, I have no idea how we're going to solve it, but the first thing seems to be to acknowledge it, and we're not doing. And hopefully this book will kind of blow a hole in that wall. I wonder also, we have these fantastic international agreements around good donorship, New Deals, Busan, you'll know them all better than, and it's fantastic because we're no longer colonial. Now we believe in supporting governments rather than in coming in and telling them how to do the job properly. But the countries that we're talking about, very often, the kind of countries which I'm working in, well, the people in power are the ones who create the horizontal inequalities, because what's the point in seizing power if you don't get to eat everything in the country? I mean, there's no point in being in power. That's why you are there, very frequently. We're not saying all countries. So how do you support people's agenda when their very agenda is to reinforce horizontal inequalities, but in ways in which you're not even allowed to talk about the fact that there are horizontal inequalities, because we mustn't mention what, you know. And finally, if we look at conflicts and humanitarian crises are fantastic opportunities for people who have power. All the rules of the game are suddenly, you know, gone. Yeah? The institutions are usually weakened. You know, the social rules of conduct are weakened. New economic opportunities come on board. Old ones disappear. So, you know, if you're in the right place, you've got the right power. You know, and the link between, I mean, you bring out in the book the link between the political and the economic inequalities. It's not just around perception. You know, you can use one to create another. Yeah, and you know, people use conflict to advance economic advantage. I mean, in countries I've been, I mean, I have known that half of the rebel attacks have not been done by the rebels at all. It's one businessman maintaining their monopoly and taking out rivals, and you call it a rebel attack, and that's fine. Or, you know, you're a soldier, you want to grab someone's land. Well, if you object, you will be the next dead person called. Right. Now, recovery, we go into this kind of flux situation, and we want to support recovery, and we talk about economic recovery. And surely, if, you know, if one hole gets blown in a wall, it's got to be the wall which kind of confines us to talking about economic recovery, whereas actually we need to be talking about the recovery of people. So if we're trying to create jobs, who gets them, how that creation of jobs and that distribution of jobs is perceived has got to be on the agenda. And yet the one thing that we are never allowed to talk about or acknowledge even exists in a post-conflict is the fact that there was an ethnic conflict and horizontal inequality in the first place.
Great. I think we have a brilliant start for the discussion.